Imagine a place on earth where every grain of dust carries the footsteps of prophets, where the prayers of thousands of years still echo through the air, even though centuries have passed. A land where heaven and earth once seemed to touch. A place where some of the greatest miracles in the history of faith took place. Yet also a place that witnessed some of the most painful moments in human history. That place is Jerusalem. And at the heart of Jerusalem stands a sacred site toward which the hearts of billions of believers turn, Masjid Al-Aqsa. But there is a question that not many people pause to consider. Do we truly understand what Al-Aqsa is? Most people only know that it is the third holiest site in Islam, after Mecca and Medina. Yet the truth is that the story of Al-Aqsa did not begin with the walls of a mosque. It did not begin in the time of Muslims. Its story reaches back to a distant era when human history itself was still in its earliest dawn. Before kingdoms were built, before empires rose and fell, before the towers and golden domes of Jerusalem appeared against the sky, this land had already been destined for a sacred purpose. According to Islamic tradition, the area where Masjid Al-Aqsa stands today was blessed by Allah from the earliest days of human history. It is not merely a location on a map. It is a land wrapped in sacred meaning from the very beginning of time's flow. The Quran mentions this place in Surah Al-Isra, describing the land surrounding Al-Aqsa as a land that Allah has blessed. That statement is not only a description, it is a declaration of the special place this land holds within the divine plan of human history. Many Islamic scholars believe that the first foundations of worship in this area were laid by Prophet Adam, the first father of humanity. After being sent down to earth, Adam did not only begin the human journey in this world, he also established places where Allah would be worshipped. Among those places, the land of Al-Aqsa is believed to have been one of the earliest. If that is true, it means that from the very beginning of human history, this place was dedicated to the worship of the Creator. Other traditions connect the establishment of worship in this land with Prophet Ibrahim, whom the Quran calls Khalilullah, the close friend of Allah. Ibrahim stands at the center of the history of all monotheistic faiths. It was he and his son Ismail who rebuilt the Kaaba in Mecca. And according to many scholars, Ibrahim and his family also played a role in establishing worship in the land of Jerusalem. This makes Al-Aqsa part of the same sacred chain of history as the Kaaba itself. Islamic traditions also contain a detail that surprises many people. Masjid Al-Aqsa is believed to be the second house of worship built on earth, constructed about 40 years after the Kaaba. This means that long before great civilizations appeared, long before cities and empires dominated the earth, there already existed two centers of worship dedicated to Allah, one in Mecca and one in Jerusalem. These two places were never separate in meaning. They were connected points in the sacred network of the history of faith. For this reason, when we speak about Al-Aqsa, we are not only speaking about a mosque, but we are speaking about a land where the stories of the prophets intersect. This is the place where Ibrahim may have prayed. This is the place where Dawood would rule. This is where Sulaiman would build one of the most magnificent structures of the ancient world. This is where Isa would teach. And finally, this is where Muhammad, the final prophet, would arrive during a miraculous night to lead all the prophets together in a prayer unlike anything seen in human history. So the story of Al-Aqsa is not simply the story of a city or an architectural structure. It is the story of the entire history of monotheistic faith on earth. It is the story of how Allah guided humanity through the ages, sending prophets to remind people of the true purpose of life. And perhaps the most remarkable part is that the story is not finished. For thousands of years, Al-Aqsa has witnessed moments of glory and periods of darkness, great victories and painful losses. Yet every time history seemed to turn away from it, the site was restored in ways people could never have predicted. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained, the place where we explore the greatest stories from the lives of the prophets and the sacred marks they left upon the world. If you enjoy learning about Islamic history, miracles, and the deep lessons hidden in the past, subscribe now to support the channel so we can continue bringing meaningful stories in future videos. And now, prepare to step into a journey across thousands of years of history as we uncover the story of Masjid Al-Aqsa, a place where every stone carries a story, and every story brings us closer to understanding the great plan of Allah for humanity. After the land of Jerusalem had been destined as a place of worship from the earliest stages of human history, the next chapters of the story of Al-Aqsa began to be written by the prophets whom Allah chose to guide humanity. Generations came and went, but this land gradually became the center of a remarkable era, a time when prophets not only delivered revelation, but also built societies founded upon faith and justice. Among the great figures who walked this land, Prophet Dawood was the one who transformed the destiny of Jerusalem. The city had existed long before his time, but it had never truly become the center of a kingdom built upon devotion to Allah. When Dawood conquered Jerusalem, he did not simply gain a strategic city. He turned it into the heart of a new society, one where law, justice, and the worship of Allah became the foundation of life. The Quran mentions Dawood not only as a king, but also as a prophet blessed with wisdom and extraordinary authority. He was given the ability to judge fairly between people. Even nature itself seemed to join him in glorifying Allah. The mountains and birds are described as praising the Creator alongside him. Under the leadership of Dawood, Jerusalem became a city where faith and power did not oppose one another, but supported one another. Yet Dawood was not the one destined to complete the great house of worship that would stand upon this sacred land. That task was given to his son, Prophet Sulaiman. If Dawood laid the foundation of the kingdom, Sulaiman raised it to its peak of power, prosperity, and magnificence. Allah granted Sulaiman gifts that very few people in history were ever given. The Quran describes how he was granted control over the wind, understanding of the speech of animals, and authority over the jinn, beings created from smokeless fire. These jinn worked under his command, carrying out tasks that human strength alone could not accomplish. Under Sulaiman's direction, a magnificent structure rose upon the land of Al-Aqsa. Massive stones were transported and placed into position. High walls were raised. A great sanctuary emerged beneath the skies of Jerusalem. This structure became known as Bayt al-Maqdis, and for generations it served as the spiritual center of the community of Bani Israel. Traditional descriptions emphasize the beauty and grandeur of the structure. Precious materials were used. Detailed craftsmanship decorated its halls. Yet its true value did not lie in gold or jewels. Its true purpose was far greater. It was a place where people gathered to pray, to seek guidance from Allah, and to remember that life was not meant to revolve around power or wealth. For a long time, Bayt al-Maqdis stood as the spiritual heart of Bani Israel. Thousands gathered there during sacred times. Prayers echoed through its halls. New generations were taught that they were a community entrusted with carrying the message of Allah to the world. But human history rarely moves in a straight line. After the passing of Sulaiman, gradual changes began to appear within the society of Bani Israel. New generations slowly moved away from the principles taught by the prophets. Instead of maintaining pure worship devoted only to Allah, some people began adopting practices and beliefs from surrounding nations. Symbols of false worship appeared. Moral values that once formed the foundation of society were replaced by greed, injustice, and struggles for power. The warnings of the prophets began to become reality. When a community is given guidance but turns away from it, consequences inevitably follow. The prophets warned them repeatedly, yet human beings do not always listen. And when a society loses the balance between power and faith, history often moves toward a turning point. Jerusalem, once the symbol of a golden era, was approaching a moment no one could imagine. The walls of Beit al-Maqdis still stood strong. Prayers still echoed within its halls. Yet beneath the surface of prosperity, the seeds of decline had begun to grow. And soon, history would witness one of the most painful chapters ever written in the story of this sacred city. Signs of decline had appeared long before disaster finally arrived. After the glorious era of Prophet Dawood and Prophet Sulaiman, the society of Bani Israel slowly changed in ways the prophets had warned about. New generations grew up surrounded by prosperity, living in cities protected by strong walls and magnificent temples. Yet that very prosperity caused many to forget why this land had been blessed in the first place. At first, the changes were subtle. Traditions from neighboring peoples slowly entered their lives. Rituals and symbols unrelated to the pure worship of Allah began to appear. The prophets warned them again and again that the strength of a nation does not lie in walls or buildings, but in loyalty to the Creator. Yet people often believe that what they possess will last forever. Many among Bani Israel believed their city could never fall. They believed Beit al-Maqdis would always stand as a symbol of their glory. They forgot that every glory on earth exists only by the permission of Allah. Then history shifted in a way none of them expected. From the east, a powerful empire was rising, Babylon, under a king known for his ambition and power, Nebuchadnezzar. His armies moved across lands like a storm that could not be stopped. When they approached Jerusalem, the walls that once seemed unbreakable began to appear fragile. The attack of Babylon became a turning point in the history of the sacred city. Jerusalem was surrounded. After a period of siege and fear, the city fell. Its walls were broken. Its streets were thrown into chaos. Beit al-Maqdis, and the spiritual heart of the people, was destroyed. For those who lived through that moment, it felt as though their entire world had collapsed. The temple where thousands once prayed was reduced to ruins. Many from Bani Israel were taken away into exile, forced to leave the land their ancestors called home. Jerusalem, once a symbol of faith and prosperity, became a place of devastation. Yet history did not end there. After many decades in exile, some of the people were finally allowed to return. What they found was a city that had completely changed. Walls had to be rebuilt. Homes had to be rebuilt. Most importantly, their place of worship had to be restored. So they built a new temple. It was not as magnificent as the one built in the time of Suleiman, but it became the spiritual center of their community once again. For centuries afterward, this second temple continued to play an important role in their religious life. It was during this period that Prophet Isa appeared. He entered the land of Jerusalem with a powerful message: return to the pure worship of Allah. Isa spoke not only about rituals, but about sincerity of the heart. The Quran describes how Allah granted him miracles. He healed the blind, cured lepers, and by Allah's permission, brought birds made from clay to life. Yet like many prophets before him, Isa faced strong opposition. Some rejected his message and even plotted to kill him. According to the Quran, Allah saved Isa from their plot and raised him up. But turmoil in the land continued. Eventually, another great power arrived, this time from the west. The Roman Empire expanded toward Jerusalem. In the year 70 of the Common Era, Roman forces under Titus surrounded the city. After a brutal siege, the Romans captured Jerusalem and destroyed the temple completely. This destruction was even more devastating than the first. The sacred complex was desecrated. The Temple Mount was abandoned and eventually turned into a dumping ground. For centuries afterward, the area was no longer the center of spiritual life. Instead, it was neglected and forgotten under different rulers. More than 5 centuries passed in silence. The stones that once heard the prayers of prophets lay beneath layers of dust. The roads that once led thousands of believers to worship became empty ground. Yet even during the darkest chapters of history, the plan of Allah was still unfolding in ways human beings could not see, because while Jerusalem lay forgotten, far to the south in the Arabian Peninsula, a man was growing up whose mission would forever change the destiny of Al-Aqsa. After centuries of neglect, the sacred land that once stood at the center of prayer seemed like a closed chapter of history. Empires came and went, rulers changed, but the heart of Bayt al-Maqdis remained silent. Yet, in the divine plan of Allah, dark periods are never the end. Often they are preparation for something greater. That moment arrived during a remarkable night in human history. At that time, Prophet Muhammad, the final messenger sent to all humanity, was living through extremely difficult days in Makkah. His message of worshiping only Allah had triggered strong opposition from the Quraysh tribe. His followers were persecuted, mocked, and isolated. It seemed that the path ahead held nothing but hardship, and then Allah granted him one of the greatest miracles in the history of faith: the night journey and ascension. One night, while Prophet Muhammad was near the Kaaba at Masjid al-Haram, the angel Jibril appeared with a unique creature never seen before. It was called Al-Buraq, a miraculous mount capable of traveling faster than anything known in the world. Prophet Muhammad mounted Al-Buraq, and the journey began. From Makkah to Jerusalem, a distance that caravans would normally take more than a month to travel, was completed in an unimaginable moment. This was not simply a journey. It was a divine connection between the mission of the final prophet and the long history of the prophets before him. When Al-Buraq stopped at the sacred land of Al-Aqsa, Prophet Muhammad stepped down and entered the area where generations of prophets had prayed, when then something extraordinary happened. There he met the prophets who had come before him. Ibrahim was there, Musa was there, Isa was there. Many other prophets stood together. And in that historic moment, Prophet Muhammad was asked to lead them all in prayer. This was not an ordinary prayer. It symbolized that the message of Muhammad was the continuation and completion of the message brought by the prophets before him. After the prayer, the miraculous journey continued upward through the heavens. Prophet Muhammad traveled through the 7 heavens and met many prophets along the way: Adam, Isa, Yahya, Yusuf, Idris, Harun, Musa, and finally Ibrahim. Then he reached a place where even Jibril could go no further. There Allah gave him one of the most important obligations in Islam: the 5 daily prayers. Morris, these prayers became the direct connection between every Muslim and the Creator. After the journey ended, Prophet Muhammad returned to Al-Aqsa and then to Makkah, all within a single night. When he told people about it the next morning, many could not believe it. Traveling from Makkah to Jerusalem overnight seemed impossible to them. But his closest companion, Abu Bakr, immediately said that if Muhammad said it happened, then it must be true. Because of this, he was given the title As-Siddiq, the one who confirms the truth. From that night forward, Al-Aqsa held a permanent place in the hearts of Muslims. Yet at that time, Jerusalem was still under the control of other empires. The sacred events had taken place there, but the land itself had not yet returned to a place of Islamic worship. That chapter of the story would begin later, during the era of the righteous caliphs. After the passing of Prophet Muhammad, the Muslim community expanded beyond Arabia. Eventually, during the leadership of Umar ibn al-Khattab, Muslim forces approached Jerusalem. The city's defenders agreed to surrender only if the caliph himself came to accept the city. Umar traveled personally. He did not arrive with luxury or royal display. He traveled with one servant and a camel, taking turns riding during the journey. When he entered Jerusalem wearing simple clothes covered in desert dust, many were astonished. The city was handed over peacefully. Umar guaranteed protection for Christian and Jewish residents, ensuring their places of worship would remain safe and their religious freedom respected. Then he was shown the area of the Temple Mount. What he saw shocked him. On the sacred ground had been turned into a dumping site. For centuries, it had been deliberately neglected. Umar knelt down and began cleaning the area with his own hands. The Muslim soldiers quickly joined him. Piece by piece, the sacred ground was cleared. Later, a simple mosque was built on the site where Prophet Muhammad had prayed during the night journey. From that moment, prayers once again rose from Al-Aqsa. Over the centuries that followed, Muslim rulers expanded and beautified the complex. Under the Umayyad caliphs, the Dome of the Rock was constructed, its golden dome rising over Jerusalem. Masjid Al-Aqsa itself was expanded and became one of the great sacred complexes of the Islamic world. For centuries, it was not only a place of prayer, but also a center of learning. Scholars gathered there. Schools and libraries were built around it. Discussions about Quran, Hadith, and Islamic law filled its courtyards. History continued to bring challenges. The Crusaders captured Jerusalem for nearly a century. But Salah ad-Din eventually liberated the city and restored Al-Aqsa to its sacred role. Through the Mamluk and Ottoman eras, the site continued to be protected and maintained. Today, Al-Aqsa is not only an ancient monument in Jerusalem, it is a living symbol of the history of faith. The footsteps of prophets, caliphs, scholars, and millions of believers have passed across its stones. Its story reminds us that places blessed by Allah may pass through trials, but they are never forgotten in His plan. And every time prayers rise from its courtyards, the world is reminded that the story of faith is not something that ended in the past. It is a journey that continues. For each of us, this story carries a clear message. Our lives today may be filled with busy schedules, pressures, and material goals. But Al-Aqsa reminds us that the most important connection in life is the connection between the human heart and the Creator. Daily prayer is not only an obligation, it is the thread that keeps us aligned in a world that constantly changes. When we remember Allah during moments of peace and during times of hardship, we connect ourselves to the same stream of faith walked by prophets and millions of believers before us. If this story helped you understand the history of the prophets and the meaning of sacred lands in Islam more deeply, join the Prophetic History Explained community to explore more powerful stories from Islamic history, the lives of the prophets, Barbie, and the events that shaped the faith of billions of people. And do not forget to subscribe to support the channel so we can continue bringing more meaningful stories in future videos.